Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's interview. We are on episode 40 and I'm really pleased to have Jeanette Archer joining me because, I've been following you, Jeanette, it was actually 2021 when I was waking up to everything. I remember hearing Rachel Vaughan's story and then yours, and that was pretty much it for me. I just you know, um, so to finally have you on the show after all this time that I've been sort of trying to push back in my own way is, it's a real privilege. So I know that you're really busy and you got lots of things to share with us. So yeah, so how have you been?
Yeah, really busy. But when I'm busy, I'm really happy. I know that I'm doing my part, in this fight and this war and doing everything I can. And every time I do something that is valuable, and contributes to this, I just feel, better and better about the fact that my life was not in vain. Everything
Mm.
I went through, was not in vain. So super busy. But I do try and get a balance as well where I give myself, time off and regroup and, I'm really learning that sort of skill of balance. So yeah, very
Yeah.
busy, but in a very strong, positive place.
Yeah. It's always that fine tuning. I do the same thing because I can
Mm.
easily overwork myself. And then it's like, whoa, got to look after
Yeah,
yourself and slow down. And
yeah,
yeah. I really try to keep in mind that sometimes people, even though SRA now, satanic ritual abuse, is much more well known because of people like yourself speaking out. But I try to keep in mind that there are still people, even in the freedom movement, that don't realize that this is the core of literally
yeah,
once you peel back all the agendas, this is at the core. And even listeners that might be tuning in that have never heard of it, there's always that possibility. So maybe we can just go back from the start. I don't want you to hold back like you don't, I don't think you ever do, which is great because this has to be, we have to speak,
yeah.
no holding back, because this is the most important thing. So maybe we can go back right to the start,
Hmm.
um, to tell us a little bit about your background. So maybe about your family. Um,
Yeah, sure.
what's the earliest memories that you sort of
Gosh.
have?
So you're absolutely right. This is the core. This is the very center. This is the actual war, and when people wake up to the fact that everything leads back to satanic ritual abuse, to adrenochrome, to child trafficking, to harvesting, to the rituals and the people that are actually running the world, when people actually understand that, they will start fighting on the right side of the fence and narrowing down that fight because the truther movement and I know everybody means well, but they're being distracted here, there, and everywhere, and basically being led away by the people that are leading these movements because they're all paid anyway by government and everything else, from the core. So yeah, this is absolutely the root of the problem, and every person on this planet needs to get on board with that. And when they do, problem's over. We win. It's as simple as that. So there is that. And yeah, I am absolutely known for never diluting anything because I would never betray my true path and journey by doing that. And also, we're seriously letting down the children and the babies that are going through satanic ritual abuse when we dilute it to make
Mhm.
it comfortable for other people. So, what I always say, especially when people are new to SRA, of course, I understand the shock. Of course, I get it. But there are babies and children that are being raped, tortured, and murdered week in and week out that are going through a living hell that anybody that hasn't been through it can't even begin to comprehend. So, when hearing it shocks you and gives you all that, discomfort, I want you to just stop and think about what it's like to actually experience it.
Mm.
And if you can't even have empathy for the adult survivors above how you're feeling, think about the babies and the children. So we owe it to them, to
Yeah.
basically put ourselves through hell whether it's for me having to keep reliving memories, or it's for people that are new to the subject and they have to hear it. So I'm completely on board with those points. So yeah, my name is Jeanette Archer. I'm a survivor of satanic ritual abuse here in the UK. I'm a survivor of the what we call the elites, a very undeserving term that they got,
Mm.
um, which includes our British royal family, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and prime ministers. You know, lords, the highest of the high, so to speak. That said, I was actually born into a very low level, multi generational satanic cult family. Um, we were poor. We were lived in a very poor and destitute area growing up in London. Um, my grandfather was the one that was connected to the elites.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't completely worked out how they found me, so to speak, and targeted me so much, but they did. And then I was trafficked all around, you know, and I've been to many, many locations of the elites, you know, whether it's castles or royal estates, the Vatican, and so on and so forth. So what I've worked out so far is it's probably my bloodline, because I have the same bloodline, and my abilities, because I was born with a very psychic, powerful ability. So they then obviously put me through the MK Ultra programming
Mm-hmm.
to utilize that for their own benefit. So I was trained as an assassin, as a spy,
Wow.
and used for atrocities, basically. On top of the satanic ritual abuse side of the rituals and the hunting parties. And so, really, I suppose I'm quite generic in the way of a survivor of SRA, that my abuse and what I lived through covers across the board, really, from the
Yeah.
highest of the high to the lowest of the low. You know, the satanic families that my parents were selling me into to make money. They were very low level satanic cult rings. And then obviously the highest of the high, that I don't even think my parents had a say in that. You know,
Yeah.
they controlled that and they took me whenever they wanted. I spent a lot of time in the Tavistock in London being tortured for MK Ultra programming. So yeah, that's sort of like the basic history. And then I
When did
decided,
your Oh, sorry, you go.
yeah, no, all I was going to add to that was in May 2020, I spoke publicly about it. So yeah,
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's when you not long after that, I think it's when you did that interview with Dale, and I think that's when I first heard of
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
yeah, incredible stuff. What was the earliest age, like when did the abuse start? At what age, like being in a cult family, does that
Yeah.
usually happen?
Okay, so I believe, and again, I'm still piecing things together for myself. You know, my memories are still fragmented in some areas, but what I believe, knowing what I know, and the knowledge that I've learned as well through connecting with other survivors, um, I believe that started from birth. Actually, I was probably to a degree also being abused when my mother was pregnant,
Mhm.
indirectly through her, you know, with the drugs that she was being given, and the rituals and things. So probably, you know, literally from day dot, that abuse was starting. So from birth to 3 years old in the home, I was being prepared, if you like, to be able to withstand rituals.
Mhm.
So my father, from a very young age, would be doing the water rituals in the bath at home. So I was being held underwater, um, and tortured in that way, and then raped by him and abused by him in the home. My mother was doing the whole programming thing of being the loving mummy and then being the opposite, the punisher. Um, so I think that sort of starting the mind control, the fragmenting of my brain and everything started from birth, probably.
Wow.
Um, and then age 3 was when, in our family anyway, satanic ritual cult that my parents were in the local area, we were always then sold and put into the cults. So we would be taken to houses then, and satanic rituals and lined up, and then we would be picked out of the lineup, taken off into rooms, raped, and whatever else, and then my father and mum would be paid for that.
Right.
So they were making money from me from age 3. um Whether or not I was put outside of the family home before age 3, I think probably yes, but again, I'm still piecing that together.
Yeah.
But definitely from age 3, I was everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was taken outside of the home then for sure.
And I think in past interviews, you've spoken about the farm that you were taken to as well. And I believe that was by your grandfather.
Yeah, so the farm
What
was
age
on
was
Crown
that?
Estate.
Right.
So again, I was there from
Yeah.
as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
So my grandfather, again, from what I've pieced together, he ran that situation. He was their sort of lackey, if you like. He was also a cleaner, so he would be the one that would leave no trace after
Right.
rituals. So, but that farm was run by the royal estate, so it belonged to the crown.
Yeah.
So the rituals that took place on that farm were with elites. So that's the connection.
Right.
My grandfather ran that farm for them in the way of the satanic ritual abuse side. He was the one that had all the keys, to the underground tunnels and the various other barns and things that were around the outbuildings, that had different uses. He was the one that would, you know, have the children and the babies up on the meat hooks and be cutting them open and collecting everything. And he was the one that was, I suppose, in charge of collecting the blood, the adrenochrome. So he was kind of like an all-round servant to them.
So he answered to
But
them.
oh, definitely he answered to
Yeah.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
But he also had his own setup in his own home where I was taken for snuff videos and rituals and things there. Again, that was all about making money. But the farm, how he got connected to that farm, I don't know. But he ran the show for them there.
Right. So, because a lot of people think when they think of the word farm, they think about, oh, it's got animals, a barn, all that sort of stuff. But we're talking about um a different type of farm, like you've mentioned in past interviews, where um not only they're sacrificing children, but they've got they're breeding as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
It's all the sort of the most horrific things you can ever imagine. And so when you were there on all these different occasions, were you able to connect with other survivors, or do you remember other survivors or perhaps victims, or was it sort of like a bit of a blur? Because there's obviously there was a lot of time that you probably would have spent there, but
yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of time there. And yes, I connected with other children that were there for the same reason a lot. I mean,
like where
there
did
are
those
times that go
sorry,
on.
you go.
There were times when I remember more separate scenarios than others. Um, I've talked about a little baby boy called Ben that died in my arms in the underground cells. Um, yeah, I mean, children were brought to that place all the time, on minibuses or so the for example, there would be a barn where I was often chained up. I actually used to refer to it as my own barn, because it was my chains in there. So, for example, there would be lots of children sometimes in there with me, waiting to be taken out for rituals or being prepared for rituals. Because sometimes I could be there for days, being starved and cleansed, and all the stuff they put you through before a big high date ritual. So yeah, I mean, I was around children a lot there, and I used to see them either survive or die. That was normal life there.
Where were these children coming from? Were they just also cult families, or was it because obviously we know that there are a lot of children that go missing every year. Like it's
Mm,
probably um, the mass numbers
mass,
globally.
yeah.
So you said that they were coming on minibuses,
They would be the children coming from like children's homes.
right?
They were just what's the word? Dispensable, is that the word? I mean, they were the ones that would just be like a conveyor belt of children that they could kill and no one would ask any questions.
Mm.
Um, we didn't I was going to say we didn't have the security in place then that we do now, but we don't even have it now, do we? Children are being used in the exact same way and they are expendable. But so you would have on like little mini buses children from the children's homes. You would have children that they'd literally just gone on the streets and abducted. You would have the children from the cult families but they were the ones most of the time that would be kept alive. So yeah, there was from all over different ways of. There's never ever a shortage of children for them, never.
Mm. So, you were speaking about your barn where you were chained up, and you would be there at a certain period of time when they were cleansing you. What was the purpose of cleansing you? For people that might know why they do that.
They do that preparing you for what I call high date rituals, so the big rituals that are on their calendar through the year. So that is so, and again, this is what I've tried to work out for myself, and from my memories of what I would be told when these things were happening to me, it was because they needed me to be completely pure. And then they believed that this light that I had um, would be as pure in its purest form as possible so they could take that from me. So all the children needed to be as pure as possible. And then they're offering to Satan, they get more rewards for that. So the whole process would be no food. It would be they would put tubes down my throat and up my bottom so that then everything would be flushing out. They would there was always drugs involved, but that tended to be more towards when the ritual was about to happen. So yes, it was about emptying out the body. It was the most horrific experience, obviously. I mean, it's exceptionally painful. And obviously you go into starvation mode, which is terrifying in itself.
So once you were, I guess they considered you ready for the ritual, what would happen then? I guess, yeah.
So with these particular rituals, I would be put in a white gown, and there would be other children in the white gowns, and we would just be led out in a queue, really, just in a line. By this time, we would all be on drugs. They would have given us something, um, which would have just made us all very silent and zombified and robotic almost. And we just all knew our places. It just depends on what the ritual was. So most of us would just take it in turns in going out and being laid out on the slab, which was a big stone slab for rituals. Um, and then for me, because I was never killed, um, the rituals would be me having to witness other children and babies being killed and being tortured, and then raped by multiple multiple people, it could be 20, 30 at a time. Um, so it just depends on the ritual. There would be water rituals on the farm as well, which was down by the stream. And I would be laid out at the side of the stream, again, just continuously being raped, whilst having to witness lines of children being sacrificed at the edge of the stream until that water just ran red. It was just a flow of blood then. That, I'm pretty sure, just probably went on for hours. But again, these are all things that I'm piecing together and working out. Time is a really difficult thing to gauge with this. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so it just depended on the ritual really, as to what happened. And then post rituals for me were very much, I was put into, again, what I called my coffin, because I had a coffin made to measure. And I'd be put in a coffin and buried underground and brought up when it was daylight. And so that, there was a huge variation really in what I went through during rituals, depending on the time of the year and where we were, what locations and things.
Wow. I'm sorry. Yes, it's never easier for like to listen to hear that, let alone to know that that's actually something that you went through.
Yeah,
But now like people have to listen. They have to at some. We are all responsible for every single child on this planet, regard
we are.
whether they are yours or not. Because this is a war on children, and now what we're seeing, um, like in Australia, parents don't have their rights to the kids anymore. They are after all the children. Um, so it really shows you that this, what you're describing, what you've went through, is the core
Yeah,
is the core of everything, and it's just been filtering. When I say filtering, I mean everything that they've been doing to you and all the other um, everyone that's been involved in these rituals. Now we are seeing it on the biggest
yeah,
scale that we've ever seen it before. Um, oh, um, yeah. So
yeah.
my thought as well. So going back to what you were talking about with all the children and the babies, and how, like, I'm assuming, well, I shouldn't assume, but where do they dispose of all the bodies? Like, how do they hide all that evidence?
Um, it was, again, it was just like routine. There was on the farm, if we're staying with that location, but whether you're talking about royal estates or castles, you know they have people that are assigned to do that. They're cleaners, they do their job. So on the farm, for example, there was what I used to call the well, but it was just a big hole dug out in the ground, and the little bodies would go in there, like babies basically. The older bodies, because obviously also there's adults that are sacrificed in these rituals as well, but the older children or the adults, there was forest land surrounding the farm, and they would just be put in shallow graves, probably moved at a later date, I don't know. um there was incinerators that would be lit the day after, whatever, where bodies were burned. um on the royal estates, on the big, they just bury them on the land. I mean, if you allowed, if people got onto those lands and dug them up, thousands and thousands of bodies would be found there. um they just get buried, they get burned, they get hidden, I mean, they get chopped up, they get eaten,
Mm.
they get cooked. Babies get cooked and eaten. So the disposing of these things, um they have many, many methods. I remember once seeing literally like a big bath thing of like acid, and
Yeah.
just body parts being thrown into that, and the smells, and the, you can't ever forget those sorts of things. But so they just have so many methods to dispose of what they have no longer any purpose for.
Yeah. And you've spoken about the harvesting of blood adrenochrome. Can you talk a little bit about why that is so important for them?
Well, they're completely addicted to it. That's why. And in my opinion, it's the strongest drug on the planet. When you see somebody get high on adrenochrome, it's like nothing compares to that. I grew up surrounded by a lot of drug taking. I've seen all sorts of people on all sorts of things, and there's nothing like adrenochrome. So adrenochrome is adrenalized blood. So that's why they torture children and instill the highest form of terror through those tortures to allow that blood to become fully adrenalized, and that's the blood they drink. And they are completely addicted to it. They believe that it gives them eternal life and eternal youth and all that crap. And because it has all those properties um in it, I suppose, as it's coming from children. So I think they fountain of youth as a new terminology for it now, because again they're normalizing it and they're starting to make it sound like some kind of bloody beauty treatment or whatever. So children are tortured for this stuff, and they can't live without it. They cannot live without it. um they're highly addicted to it, especially the more sort of low level side of satanic ritual abuse. And when I say low level, I'm talking about lower level energies, like different species, like the reptilians that I talk about. The addiction to adrenochrome is off the scale. So they have to have a supply to that no matter what. And that is one of the things as to why they are doing everything they are doing in this world, on this planet, at this point in history, because they cannot give up their supply of adrenochrome. So what you said about, they have free reign to our children. They're taking away parents' rights. The secret family courts, everything is set up for exactly this. So they can
Yes,
have children to fulfill their supply of adrenochrome and fulfill their want for wealth,
yeah,
whether that's selling their organs, whether that's trafficking them, and so on and so forth. So if you keep peeling back the layers, that's what you'll get to.
yeah.
Ultimately, that is it. That is what they want. They want planet Earth to be filled with a constant supply of adrenochrome and as much wealth as they desire. And they planned a very, very long time ago to use children to achieve that.
Mm. It's actually quite incredible that after everything that you've been through, that you've survived, and that there's a reason why you're here on this planet and doing the work that you're doing. And it's quite incredible to think that with all the rituals that have occurred, the multiple times that you've come so close to death,
Yeah.
and with all the other children that have died around you, do you think there's um how do you think that you were, was it purely based on your bloodline that you survived, or that you were chosen to survive, or was there sort of like did they pre-choose which kids were going to die versus which weren't going to die? Like, how was that? Was that a strategic thing, or was it something just left to chance?
No, I don't think it's left to chance. I think the children that are kept alive are, like myself, are very much strategically worked out. So it will be to do with bloodline, and it will be to do with abilities that they can make use of with the MK programming. Like I spoke about earlier about, you know, being trained as the assassin, as a spy, and using my abilities, there's also a bit of a contract between the light and the dark. And I've spoken about this briefly here and there, but it's a whole other level of understanding. So if they were to kill me, the consequence of that, they don't want to endure. So the light that would come from them killing me would actually destroy a lot of their power.
Oh.
So they know that there's certain souls, if you like, that they do not want to kill because A, it means they can't use me then for their own gain, and B, the consequences will probably be quite damaging for them.
Yeah.
So it's like a contract
Right.
between light and dark. That said, I'm sure as well a bit of it was a little bit of potluck where, you know, they managed to keep me alive at times when I was very close. And I have died and been brought back as well. And I had a lot of out of body experiences during rituals where I was taken up with the angels and then come back into my body when it was all over. So I think me staying alive was a combination of that, what I've talked about, where they won't kill me because I'm useful. They won't kill me because of my bloodline. They won't kill me because of my soul level, and they won't kill me because no, and I didn't die because I managed to preserve myself with those kinds of out of body experiences, um, and somehow I got to where to today, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever want to die?
Yes, all the time. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I used to plead with the angel mummy, because I used to play with angel children, and there was always an angel mummy there, and I used to plead with her, you know, I don't want to go back. Please don't send me back.
Mm.
I want to stay here, you know. And um she always used to say to me, you have to go back, and one day you will understand why,
Mm.
but we'll never leave you. We're still always going to be with you. Um so yeah, and through my sort of teens and 20s, when I was very had all my repressed memories, I always had a suicide plan, always. And now when I look back, I say it was my suicide plan kept me alive,
Mhm.
because it just kept me going for one more day and one more day, because I would say to myself, it's okay, Jeanette, because you've got your suicide plan.
Mm.
So anytime you want out, you can leave. And that
Mm.
just gave me that little bit of strength to do one more day.
Yeah.
And I always just had this deeper feeling in those days when I was in horrific pain, but not understanding why, because my memories were hidden. It just gave me that courage, really, because I always just had this strong feeling of there's a really strong purpose behind this. But
Mm.
I'd had no vision at that point.
Yeah.
Obviously, once that happened, you know, my soul level of understanding my journey and my purpose, um, that's my courage, you know, and the fact that I know what's there when we do die, you know, because I spent time there. I think that's what helps me be so fearless, you
Mm.
know, because I actually know the power of our souls and our own light individually. Um, and when you can see it from above, so to speak, you can see the darkness, them, actually, how weak it actually is. It only needs for humanity to stand and go no, no to all our corrupt institutions, no to the authorities that think they have authority over us, and so on and so
Mm.
forth. It only takes for humanity to stand and for all that light to connect. It's game over for them.
Yeah.
So I think that just keeps me able to be courageous and keep recognizing I'm here alive for this reason.
Mm. That's beautiful. And it's also that always brings me back to why it might, like, timelines are hard to sort of talk, like they don't exist. So I always think of timelines
Yeah.
like, hang on a second, they don't exist. But
Yeah.
it's that, people really will lose fear when they face their own fear within themselves. And that's depending on what sort of, everyone's experienced some sort of trauma within their life, especially if you're living on this planet. It's very hard
Yes.
not to.
Yes.
Like, I know I've had to face my own traumas as well, and it's very painful. But on the other side, like, all
Mm.
relative, of course, it's when you do face it, it's like, what it is. It's so, like, you feel invincible almost. It's like, what was I so afraid of?
Yeah.
I can do this. You can't stop me. You can't hold me back. You can't shut me down or shut me up. Um, that's why I just love hearing when anyone stands up and finds that within themselves, because it's like, wow, you are shining. Look at you go. Um, and that's, really when we're going to see the change. But unfortunately,
Yes.
people tend to choose that path of, like, complete suffering until they decide to change,
Yeah.
um, which is a interesting way of doing it. But I want to go back to, because you talked about the farm, how it was on royal land. Um, did you ever actually see the queen or the prince uh, committing these crimes and these rituals?
Yes. Yes. Often.
Often, yeah,
Um, and committing these crimes against myself.
yeah.
So I was ritually abused by both of them, and used often in their satanic rituals. So um, yes, on the farm, and yes, I was often taken to the royal estates, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, where I was used in their hunting parties and so on and so forth. So, yes, absolutely, I can say without any doubt that I was witness to her and him
Mhm.
committing crimes against children.
So many people, that would be so hard to believe, because they're
Wouldn't it?
the facade that they have built up over all these years, and how
They've done a
protected
clever
they are.
job, haven't they?
Oh yeah, the manipulation,
Hmm.
whatever it takes. Now, something that I know that you've, I guess, copped a lot of, um, uh, you've been the people have tried to discredit you as well for a lot of things that you have spoken out about. And I think one of the things is that you have actually witnessed, um, the royal family become reptilians. Can you talk a little bit about that, witnessing that, and also how you have dealt with that, with those types of people trying to discredit you as well?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I think by the time I got to the point where I made the decision to go and stand outside Windsor Castle and do that speech, I just got to the point where I didn't care anymore about being discredited or the trolls or, these cults that try and take me down. And, you know, the thing is, from the moment I spoke out, I was attacked. I mean, and now, having more understanding of the knowledge that I was holding, I can understand why they suddenly thought, shit, Jeanette's speaking out. We need to
Mm.
do everything in our power to stop that. So I got attacked every which way. They planted people in my life that I thought were friends, and
Mm.
to, high up cults that are, connected to Hollywood that are here in the UK trying to discredit me online. And so there's YouTube videos devoted, there's YouTube channels literally devoted to discrediting me, Um, none of it impacts me at all. But for a while, I had to push through that and start to have an understanding of why it was going on. So all it actually did was make me so much stronger,
Mm.
so much stronger. And it just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. They were having the opposite effect on what they were trying to achieve. So by the time I thought about, right, I'm going to go and stand outside Windsor Castle, I'm going to actually take it to her turf and I'm
Yeah.
going to tell the world what she is, it was just so empowering. And I was beyond caring about the backlash at that point. Hence, I did that. So,
Such a
talking
powerful
about the
speech, by the way.
reptilian, thank you. Yeah,
Mm.
it was,
The
yeah,
you can
it was
feel
a
the
big,
energy through the phone. It's like, whoa,
yes.
yeah.
And the demonic energy was everywhere that day
Was
as
it?
well. So that
Wow.
was, yeah, I mean, there's even part of the video, and only a few people have noticed it, but you can hear like a growling, like a demonic growling. And me being me, with the abilities I have, I could see the demonic energy in the air of that day and everything as well. So it was a full on battle that day between
Wow.
me and them, you know. But anyway, so once I'd done that speech, and I just got to the point where I thought, okay, I have shared my experiences about satanic ritual abuse. I've given so much information about rituals, and I've uncovered more and more memories for myself as I've gone along, and my MK programming, even they even triggered that for me, you know, to remember all that when I was attacked by the Rothschilds protectors that call themselves police.
Yeah.
So things like that had just kept happening and kept happening. So it's just made me so much stronger. But I just got to the point where I thought the world needs to know everything, because I can't just give pieces hoping that, you know, they're going to piece the rest together themselves, or because I'm living in fear of what people are going to think of me. It was just going against my own belief system, you know.
Mm.
And there's one thing that I say to people, and I've said to myself and tried so hard to live by, is be true to yourself no matter what it takes, no matter what. So I knew that I had to take that next step. So then talking out about reptilians for me was the next step and the next sort of progression, because people have got to understand that there are many, many other species on this planet,
Mm.
which is why we're in the problem. We're in the shit that we're in, you know, which is
Mm.
why this is all happening to our children. So talking about reptilians to me, because it was normal life for me. I don't struggle with talking about it because it's not new to me.
Mm.
So I had to just make that decision, and then be true to that decision, be true to the journey, and just do it. And obviously, a lot of people are like, yeah, she's crazy. You know, that's okay. I've been called that since I very first spoke out in my family, you know, when I was 28 years old, was labeled with everything. So that literally doesn't even touch me.
Can
But
I, sorry,
yeah, sure, go on.
I just wanted to offer another perspective to people that might be listening to this and thinking that, oh my, what the hell are these girls talking about? You know, because there's actually an interesting sort of scientific explanation that could help people. Now,
Okay.
there's a visible light spectrum that exists within the electromagnetic spectrum, which is massive. So, like, think about your you know, your cosmic rays, your UV rays, your microwaves, your AM, FM radio, infrared, and the list goes on. And it's massive. Now, the visible light spectrum is about I think it's like 0.1%, right? And that's what humans look like. That's what we can see in
Yes.
comparison to that massive spectrum. So to say that entities or energies like what you're describing don't exist, it's like you can't actually say that. Like, essentially, the point that I'm trying to make is that humans are
Yeah.
essentially blind.
Yes.
when you put in perspective to that massive spectrum of what exists. So
Yes.
let maybe think about that from that perspective and sort of go, wow, well, we all know
Yeah.
that the light and the dark does exist. So,
Mm.
you know, what is that energy? What's that force, and where does it live?
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
and I think the issue with the human race is arrogance.
yeah,
How can people possibly think that the human species is all there is?
exactly.
You know, that's so arrogant, isn't it?
It is.
Why
It is.
why do we have such grandeur of our race? You know, we are not the only species, but why would anyone even try and think that we are? You know, we're a very arrogant race.
Mm,
And there are also humans on this planet that can see a bit further out of that spectrum that you're talking about. You know, people
mm,
like myself
mhm.
that have peripheral vision within that electro field, you know.
Yeah,
So we're a very arrogant species, and people need to just drop that, you know, and recognize that if, you know, these people that are refusing to acknowledge such basic information, they're going to end up dropping down dead in shock when they see this truth, because they will see this truth,
eventually.
you know.
Yeah.
The other theory behind the reptilians is that, well, how people are trying to justify it, and this goes very much in the sort of Christian community, is that they're just a demonic energy. No, they're not. They're a species. They're a
Yeah. Okay.
species.
Mm.
So I am not alone in the fact that I have seen reptilians many, many times. There is colonies after colonies of different species of life that are not human living underground on this planet. You know, you've got draconians, the greys. You've got, I mean, I call them the white blob species. There's a whole lot, you know, because I have to make up my own names when I don't know the names for them myself. But there's colonies of these things under there. And reptilians are the norm. They walk amongst us all the time. And they, another theory that I heard the other day, and I thought, okay, I'll bear that in mind, but I don't think so, is that they are saying that reptilians have the ability to access the human brain. So we see them as human. They don't actually shapeshift.
Mhm.
Now, again, I'm sorry, but they're not that clever. They're not
Okay.
that clever. Reptilians are so low level. You know, they're 2D at best. They've got zero intelligence when they're in reptilian form. Um, they don't have the capacity to control the human brain in the
Right.
way of make us hallucinate, so to speak. They
Mm.
literally physically change form.
Wow. What
That's
was
their
it?
thing.
What was it like actually seeing? I know that you probably because you've seen it a lot, but yeah, just maybe sort of, mm, I don't know, explain how what was it like actually seeing whether it was the Queen or anyone actually shift? Like what?
Yeah.
I don't know how to ask the question. How does it
No, you
happen?
just asked it. You
Yeah.
know, you have to just say things as that basic.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying witnessing that. So the Queen, for example, that's who we're talking about. So she would walk out last for the ritual because she was, you know, the grandmaster of everything. And then she would shapeshift once she was out ready for the ritual. The first, if I was laid out on the slab, the first thing she would do once she'd shapeshifted, because initially they just become very tall, they're huge, you know, and then she would turn around and just show me her face, the reptilian face, and she would just like snarl, and it was terrifying, you know, this big horrible reptilian face. Um, it's terrifying watching that shapeshift because seeing a human go to reptilian, you know you're in trouble because they are so demonic and so brutal. I mean, don't get me wrong, so are Satanists in human form, but it's a whole different energy then. The smell in the air changes, the darkness becomes even darker because they're summoning demons while they're doing all this. And so it's not just watching a human turn into a reptilian, it's just because you know damn well what's about to go down.
Right.
So I watched the Queen shapeshift many, many, many times.
Wow. Where do we go from here? um
I know.
all right, well, I'm being mindful of time. I still got a couple more questions I want to ask, because your reason for being on this planet is that one of the things that I see is that you encourage other survivors to find recovery, to speak
Yeah,
out if they choose to, or that is
yeah.
so important. And I've actually, I've met survivors that haven't, unfortunately,
Mm,
um, been able to recover. And it's really painful because, I one day I'm with that person, and then the following day I'm with someone else because of the MK Ultra. It's actually really scary to see. And so when you're talking about recovery, a lot of the times especially with one person was telling me, they went to try and start doing therapy, and then all of a sudden a person was placed in their life that would stop them.
mm,
So if you were to offer advice,
yeah,
because obviously you can see that the work that you've done on yourself, you're very articulate, you're centered within yourself, and you've worked on yourself, you faced the horror, and you probably, and I don't know what level where you're at with that, but you
mm,
can, how can you learn to start to trust someone? I know that's a really hard question to answer, but when you start to go down that path of recovery, like, because you essentially have to learn how to trust someone again and open up.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's
Um,
being vulnerable, that's a terrifying thing to even conceptualize, after that amount of
yeah.
pain. How did
Okay, yeah.
maybe
So
how did
what
you sort of
I mean,
start?
what I would say to people as starting with the trust thing, the first step to take is learn to trust your own process. Learn to trust yourself. Remind yourself that you have already survived it. Because when you go through recovering memories and facing up to your trauma, um, you're reliving, and it feels so real, like you're going through it there and then. But to tell yourself you've already survived it and you can trust in your own survival. If you're still alive and you have come through and you are functioning on any level whatsoever, you've done it, you've survived. From there on in, it's just about building on that quality and building on that quality. What I did, I found I've had two exceptionally trustworthy and amazing therapists in my life. And I methodically, every single time I had a flashback or a memory, I would sit in my therapy and I would relive it and I would talk it through and I would feel all the feelings I wasn't allowed to access at the time that it was happening.
Mm.
You're not allowed to feel angry. You're not allowed to feel rage. You're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to feel the pain. You have to suppress everything. And that's any trauma in life,
That's right.
not just SRA. When you're going through trauma, you don't have the capacity to experience those feelings. You
Yeah.
just go into survival mode. And that means locking everything away.
Mm.
So every single memory, if you can find the courage to somehow face it, you could do writing in a journal. You don't have to speak to anyone. You haven't got to suddenly trust a therapist. You could speak to your best friend. You could speak to your partner. You could yeah, find a therapist or whatever. So there's options. It's
Yeah.
not just about counselling and therapy. Do not go anywhere near the psychiatry world. I'm just going to throw that in there because that is literally run by Satanists. So the first thing is to trust that you've already survived and trust your own process. Then find a way to face your memories in whatever feels right for you. And again, whilst doing that, know that you are safe because you've already survived it. It's going to feel terrible. It's going to feel like hell. Reliving memories feels like hell. If you can push through and push through, then that memory in particular, you have taken your power away from it. And you've given that bit of power back to you. And it's literally a brick by brick process. And I did that process for at least 20 years of just recovering memories, and they kept coming. They still keep coming. It'll be a life thing for me. But now I know how to put another brick in place. And those bricks are your foundation. They are what solidifies who you are. So trust yourself before you trust anybody. Trust your own capacity as a soul in a human body to have far more resilience and strength than you even know is there. My theory, which is why I started the journey I've started, the first download I had of why I'm here and what I need to do is to help other survivors break their silence. And I say this all the time, that silence is their greatest weapon, as in the Satanists, and exposure is their biggest fear. So if imagine just for a moment on a huge scale, if every single victim and survivor of satanic ritual abuse spoke out and broke their silence, not only would the light on this planet expand to a degree that we've never even experienced ever before in our lives, they would have nowhere left to go.
That's right.
There would be no more access because silence is the only thing they have that keeps them going, which is why I started doing what I did, speaking out to heal, supporting SRA survivors. It was all about encouraging. If I speak out, if one person sees and looks and goes, right, she's done it and she's still alive, she's all right, she's managing to eat and drink and raise her children and function in life, maybe I can too. That was my whole drive. Break the silence, no matter how you do it, whether you write it in a journal, talk to a best friend, talk to a therapist. The second you do that, their power's gone. It's gone.
I love writing
I
in
mean,
journals. It's just
it's
like,
so powerful.
because
Yeah.
you're like, my brain can sometimes get so full of thoughts, and like you can't, I think really fast sometimes, and it's just like,
Yeah.
it's mayhem sometimes. And as soon as I put something down on paper, it's like it's all of a sudden tangible and I can see it. I'm like, well, that's a bit silly to be thinking that. Why am I so, or wow, that's really what I was thinking. I need to look at that. It's just, it really grounds that energy. And it's so, I love
Absolutely. And
journaling.
it brings in so much freedom because there's so much shame attached to abuse, whatever the abuse is. So if you write, when you're writing in a journal, you keep reminding yourself, no one's ever going to read it unless I let them.
Yeah.
You can write letters to people and never send them, your perpetrators, where you just let yourself have complete freedom to process every single emotion you want to and say everything you've never been allowed to say. No one ever needs to read it.
Yeah.
That's so cathartic and so empowering.
Yeah. I don't know what it's been, but this interview, like this last hour, it's not nerves, but my body hasn't stopped shaking. I don't know what's like. I get real physical reactions to when something's. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a good, as in it's a good thing.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
do
maybe it's
understand
the
it.
energy of what we're talking about. I think it's, yeah.
You're releasing as well. You're
Yeah,
finding answers for yourself and you're
yeah.
releasing.
Yeah, it's
And also there's a part of you that knows you're doing something so powerful right now.
because yeah, even I have to go through my own process. Like today, I was preparing myself mentally, because it's not just a conversation. It's I don't even know how to describe it, but I get such a I have to prepare myself for it and put myself in the mindset. I have to allow to open my heart and
Mm.
my just open my heart, because the this type of force that we're um it's such a difficult place to navigate sometimes, because only way I can best describe it is that this evil doesn't exist when when we shine our love and light on it. And it's very hard to do when you're angry at it, and when you're like, how could they it's very easy to get angry, and have and so how do I use that energy and transform that? So I think, yeah, it takes me some time to prepare.
Yeah.
Um, but something that I really want to sort of finish up on a big high is you are organizing the SRA conference, which I believe is going to be the first
Yeah.
in the world, which is huge. As soon as I saw the first post, I was like, wow, this is how far we've come. Um, and imagine, like, you know, continuing on, like if we can get something like this globally in every
Yeah.
continent. But anyway, tell us about what,
Yeah.
I guess, how it all started, your plans. It's July the 17th, I believe. Is that
16th, yeah.
16th?
July
Um,
16th, yeah.
yeah. How's it all going? How are all the plans going?
Well, like every event I've ever done, I just get guidance and I know that this is the next thing to do, and same thing. I just got a download really of conference and I thought, okay, never organized a conference in my life. Um, Not an events manager. It's like clearly, you're giving me this task.
Yeah.
Just little old me, I mean, anyway, I just sort of have to trust again. It's trusting the process. So um and I was thinking about it and thinking about it, and I was just sort of asking my guides of like, right, okay, what do you want me to achieve from this? And the came very clear was to leave the existence of SRA undeniable,
Wow. Yeah.
because we do get discredited.
Mhm.
People do try and do what they do and everything else. So, and then I thought, okay, how do I do that? And do you know what? Even just the 3 years that I've been speaking out, there's so many people like yourself and survivors of SRA that have been speaking, that have been, finding the courage to stand and stand up against what's going on. And there's so much actual factual information out there now.
Mm.
So the whole idea of this conference will be to collate all of it and put it in a package, whether that is hearing, evidence and testimonies of very high caliber, credible survivors, whether that is professionals that are now recognizing that there's SRA in their industries and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to try and nutshell everything. But
Yeah.
so yes, there has been other SRA conferences, but I think this will be the first of its kind, because obviously there hasn't been many. I think I know of two. Um,
Okay.
but this will be the first of its kind on the scale, obviously,
Yeah.
and now with the caliber of speakers and information that we now have.
Mm.
Um, so it will be an international, so it's going to be worldwide. There will be speakers and information from all over the world, all continents. Um, Obviously, satanic ritual abuse, and we will leave the existence of SRA undeniable by the time we're done. So, what I want to do is that conference will be there's going to be something like 100 tickets that I'm going to allow people to buy and come to, which will cover the cost of the venue and everything else. Because we only ever able to function on donations.
Yeah.
I've got an incredible team of people, but none of us are wealthy. We're all just living day to day and trying to fight this fight. And the supporters are amazing, with helping us fund, whether it's been for banners or leaflets or helping survivors with travel costs. And we've been so lucky with how we've been supported. So I thought, okay, let's just sell some tickets now. That can pay for the location, because obviously we're going into a venue this time. We're not on the streets.
Yeah.
So we will basically be doing that, and then live streaming it. So you can either get a ticket and come and be physically there, but we've been very limited on the numbers because obviously we want to keep it very safe, very closed
Yeah.
doors, and just a nice intimate energy in there.
Mhm.
And or you can watch the live stream. So we will have multiple live streamers there that will stream it all around the world. It will be recorded. Will probably enter into the mainstream side of things.
Mhm.
I want to get it into the mainstream because I want to get it to the masses,
Yeah,
because obviously that's
definitely.
where we need to target
Yeah.
audience and all that. So I'm thinking at the moment about which ones to invite in that are mainstream but not quite Satan,
Yeah.
because obviously we know who owns the mainstream,
We
right?
do.
So I'm trying to get some kind of happy medium,
Yeah.
but also I'm very much of the thought of I will use them for my own benefit too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
How much are
by the
tickets?
end of it, hmm,
How much are
yeah.
tickets?
How much are the tickets?
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah.
They're going to be £30 probably. So cheap, really cheap. We want to make it so that it's not unaffordable to anybody. I've never ever done that with anything I've done, and that's why any donations we raise, I've always just given to people that need help with it all. So
Yeah.
the tickets will be very affordable, but limited. So by the end of it, this package
Mhm.
will be basically, if someone from another country says, right, we want to put together a conference here, in wherever, take the package and run with it. And so it can start the ball rolling where we can get an education out to the whole world using this conference as the footprint, so to speak. Um, so that's the aim. I've just got to put it all together.
It's great that you got a team as well, and a lot of people working with you, because yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm actually,
absolutely need
yeah.
people working with me because I have the visions,
Yeah.
and then I need the people to come and help me create that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually going to try. I don't. Do you still have many tickets available, or?
Julia, you will be there if you want to be there. That's it. Don't worry. You will not be charged a ticket. You will
I will
be
still.
invited
No,
to
I'll still
come.
give you. I'm saving up. I'm working as many hours as I can so I can come. Tickets are still fairly. Well, when I say affordable, they've gone up a lot since last time I
Yeah.
traveled. But yeah, I want to in some way be able to do the same thing in Australia, because just for me as well, it's just so important to refocus everyone that is, because there's different types there's awake, but then there's awake. And when you talk
Yes.
about the people that I guess fighting these I don't know, fighting this in this war, so many people are distracted, like whether it's in politics or and I'm not trying to dilute or the importance of the damages that have occurred from COVID, that whole thing, because obviously there are a lot of people dying from it now. But it's still, what am I trying to say? I'm running out of.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what
So
they did it for.
yeah, exactly. And but yeah, look, I'm just so excited about um what you guys are creating over there. So I'm going to really try hard to get there. And yeah, was there, I guess, well, anything else that you want to sort of say before we finish up?
No, I think you've done an amazing interview. You've covered so much and a real variation, which is lovely. So anybody watching this that has no clue about SRA, I think it's going to be amazing for them to actually learn from what you've done today. And also the other end of the spectrum, people that are experienced with SRA or survivors will also have a lot to gain from this interview. So thank you for doing just such an amazing interview and incredible questions, and yeah, just covering that whole spectrum. And I think
Thanks.
as well, what we've discussed is just been as brought it into a very current here and now. People do need to move on from the whole truther movement thing, and it's a tragedy what's happened. It's terrible what's happened.
Mm.
You know, a lot of people have been killed and injured from the kill shots and, you know, all the rest of it. But we still need to focus on the fact that, you know, my story may be historical, but children and babies are still dying every single day at the hands of these Satanists. So we need to stay focused, and we need to recognize that that whole movement, and you've got a whole new wave sheep, I call them, now coming forward, that are recognizing they've been duped, and they're recognizing that they've taken these kill shots and, you know, regretting it. Yeah, all that is obviously it's important, but it needs to be kept, the focus needs to be kept on this. So we have to keep telling the world what the real issue is, you know. So yes, let these people wake up, let them find, obviously they've learned by terrible mistakes they've made of their own by accepting what they've accepted. But to be brutally honest, they're a big part of why we're in this terrible situation. So as much as I'm not an unkind, uncaring person, I'm completely the opposite. We have to let people go on their own journeys and evolve whilst we carry on doing what we know is the right thing to do. Because otherwise, these children and babies are going to continue to suffer. So all that going on the outside, you know, the protesting and the truther movements and all the rest of it, let them crack on. They need to basically wake the fuck up to the actual root of the problem, and they will get there.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, those of us that know what the actual root of the problem is need to carry on and doing what we're doing. So we carry on helping each other and doing this.
And so people can find you on Facebook and Telegram. Is that right?
At the moment, yes. I'm also in the process of developing a website. So that will have all the resources on, which is the other thing that I wanted to bring in for survivors. So I will have trustworthy therapists and counselors on
Great.
there, and so
Great.
I'm gathering all that. So I'm building a website now as well, which will go off the back of the conference as well. So the two are going to run hand in hand. So after the conference, we're hoping to set up things like helplines, you know, phone lines and things like that. So the website will basically have so many resources for survivors to be able to turn to. So the only thing left then is that we progress into having physical buildings where survivors have safe places to go. So if we carry on down this path, you know, we end them, which we will. It's just a matter of when.
That's right. Oh, so yeah, great chat this evening, or well, afternoon for you. Thank you so much again for yeah, taking the time out of your day. And yeah, I'll stay in touch with you, and hopefully we can meet in person. We'll never know.
Never know.
All right.
Exactly.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jeanette.
Julia.
No worries.
Bye.
Bye.